Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final Game Changer series seminar for 2014. Before we get underway, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here tonight, the Turrbal people, pay our respects to their ancestors who came before them. The location of the State Library on Kurilpa Point has historically been a significant meeting place, gathering and sharing place for Aboriginal people, and we proudly continue that tradition here today. I acknowledge and welcome Ray Weeks, who will be conducting the interview, who is Chair of the CEO Institute, Don Meij, Group CEO and Managing Director, Domino's Pizzas, and clearly, on any measure, one of Queensland's great business stars, and, by the way, a QUT alumnus. Not that that matters, but I just thought I should mention it. Also members of the Library Board of Queensland, the Queensland Library Foundation, QUT Business School and the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame Governing Committee. And especially to our generous donors and partners, Crow Horwath, Channel 7, Origin, Morgans, NAB and 4BC. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate your company, and of course the event is live streamed, and you will be able to have access in about a week or so to the live streaming file. Game Changers is an initiative of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, which was established 6 or 7 years ago to capture the stories of our great Queensland business achievers. Businesses, business leaders, entrepreneurs from both the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors. And we wanted to induct each year a number of people. I think we've now inducted 46, and we're capturing these stories and recording these stories over the 153 years of our history and into the future. The aim is to build up a memory of great Queensland business achievement. And this series was really designed to support the ambitions of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame and to showcase our great game changers, entrepreneurs who really change the game in the industry that they're in. This year we inducted, it was a very interesting year, we inducted John Williams, who was the first businessman in Queensland, corset pioneer Sarah Jennings, who was an amazing story, worldwide patents on her products, and created an international business despite having 5 children and coming from a very poor background. Celebrated philanthropist and businessman Sir Vincent Fairfax, the Bank of Queensland, the RACQ, and that brilliant Queensland meat processing business, Tees Australia. You can see these stories online at the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame website, or indeed in the John Oxley Library. We ask you to keep your eye open on that website for future events, and we're already planning next year's Game Changer series. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ray Weeks to introduce Don Meij to you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you're in for a special treat because we have with us one of Australia's top business leaders and one of Australia's leading entrepreneurs, and that's Don Meij. Now, from pizza delivery driver to pizza store entrepreneur to group CEO and managing director of Domino's, Australia's largest and first publicly listed pizza chain, Don Meij has driven a remarkable growth story. And that's what you're going to hear tonight. Let me just give you just a couple of pieces of that growth story. From 2005, when Domino's was listed with a market cap of 120 million, it's grown to a market value today of 2.2 billion. The company has a forward price earnings multiple of 48 times, which is remarkable also, and the second highest valuation of a publicly listed restaurant brand, and is now the 8th largest ASX-listed Queensland company. Now, Domino's, you'll hear tonight as well, is the most sophisticated digital retailer, with 60% of its sales now on digital devices. And worldwide, the company has 30,000 employees and an annual turnover of $1.3 billion. It has 1,360 stores, and in the next 5 years, it will continue to grow the number of stores, and it will add another 1,000 stores in the next 5 years. Now again, it's a truly remarkable growth story. Tonight you'll understand why Don prefers to go by the title of Chief Enthusiasm Officer. You'll understand that very clearly. Don Meij is a true game changer, one who has a deep passion for innovation and entrepreneurialism. He has set his own agenda for success. So please welcome Don Meij. No problem, Don. So, Don, tell me, let's start with your personal journey.
Yeah.
Let's not make this the only question I'm going to ask on the night.
Sure.
So, if you could just tell us your story, your personal story,
Sure.
and your journey with Domino's.
Yeah, so I started in a little company actually called Silvio's Dollar Pizza, which was a 15-store chain in those days here in Brisbane. And I started as a delivery driver in Redcliffe when I was studying at QUT, and I got towards the end of my degree and I realised I didn't want to be a school teacher, so I had another 9 months to kill before I could start a new degree. So I took a store manager's job and became manager of the year for that little business, and a supervisor and operations manager, and then a small shareholder in that business, but it was still a very tiny business. And it did start to grow throughout Australia, and I became the director of operations, and by the time we got to 1993, we were about 70 stores in parts of Australia, but the Domino's business came for sale in 1993, and it was actually in its third liquidation. You know, a lot of global companies, as they first branch out, you know, they failed to become domestic, and we bought them out of their third liquidation. And originally I went down to Sydney to run Domino's, and the founder of Silvio's ran Silvio's. And in those 2 years, I learned the most about the pizza business. I still learnt my whole life. You know, I went to the US and met franchisees that might have had 9 stores, franchisees that had 200 stores. Some of my best friends today, and really got excited that, you know, Domino's hadn't failed in Australia because it wasn't a great concept, but it failed because it hadn't been applied properly. And so with our Australian knowledge and with this great concept, after running the businesses separately for 2 years, we had to make a decision, which brand should we be, and still being an Australian company, but we decided to convert our Silvio's stores into Domino's, and we became the franchise owners of Domino's in Australia. And then I went and franchised. I thought, you know, there's only one way to put your money where your mouth is to actually go and do it. And I bought my first store in first week in January in 1996. And my business plan was to take that store up 50% in its first 3 years and then go on and own 20 stores over a 20-year period. Because I'd met a franchisee in the US who had 20 stores, turning over $20 million, making about $4 million. And I thought that'd be a great business, and that could surely happen in southeast Queensland. Well, as it turned out, that store did 23.5 in its third week, went on to do $40,000 a week back in 1996, and became the second busiest Domino's store on the planet for about 3 years, and kept getting knocked off by a store in Iceland, believe it or not, every year. And before I knew it, I just kept growing, and I bought the store I'd started in Redcliffe, and over a 5-year period, we grew to 17 stores, a little business turning over $17 million here in southeast Queensland. You know, doing pretty well. And then I went down the Sydney Motor Show to buy a new sports car because life was getting a bit better. We'd done pretty tough for the first few years, you know, just investing, but I thought, you know, have a treat, go and buy a sports car. And I went and caught up with the biggest shareholder of now Domino's, and we were the third biggest player still in this is in 2001. So in 2001, we're the third biggest player in Australia and the biggest player, Pizza Hut, was way, way, way bigger. And he said, well, Don, you've had a lot of fun, time to come back into the bigger company. First reaction is, why would you do that? I mean, why would you get back into politics of a big business? But, you know, he did challenge. He said, well, if you can do it in your stores, if you can beat Pizza Hut and anybody else in your stores, why can't I do it? And that striking the competitive nature within me. I brought another franchisee, and together we bought our 25 stores of the 174 stores, allowed us to acquire 20% of the company, and then eventually 25% of the company within the next 12 months, and I became the CEO. And the founders of the old Silvio's business retired. And to give you an idea of our business, in 2001 we had 174 stores. We were just ahead of a company called Eagle Boys with 168 stores. There was a company called Pizza Haven in Australia with 280 stores, and then there was Pizza Hut, which is still owned by the US today. So very well funded, one of the biggest restaurant brands in the world, being Yum. And they had 427 stores, and we became the market leader in Australia 2 years later. I mean, it was the ride of our lives. Pizza Hut closed 130 stores, and basically what we'd done in our own businesses we were doing nationally. And we went into New Zealand in 2003. That was our first foreign country. And that was just huge. It still today holds the world record out of any. Domino's is in now nearly 80 countries, and it's from zero to first place in 2 years. It was just an amazing ride. And then we decided, my business partner Grant Burke, he decided this was getting too big too fast. And he's an entrepreneur but didn't want to live the corporate life as much. So he decided to retire, and we decided to list the company. And we listed the company in 2005, as you said. We listed. We had 120 million market cap. We then bought the licenses to France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And those companies. I mean, what a bunch of Aussies knows about selling pizza in France and the Netherlands and the Belgium. Well, we arrived in France as the number 3 player. We're now number 1 in France, so the biggest pizza company in France today, and we're 2.5 times the size of our next nearest competitor. We're number 1 in the Netherlands, and we're still number 2 in Belgium, and we're focusing on that now. It was sort of like the small little country in between that we're now taking more seriously. And then we acquired 75% of the rights to Japan just on 12 months ago, September last year, and that's been amazing. We arrived as number 3 player, we're number 2 now. We will be market leader in Japan by the end of next year. So there's something about how we do business that has allowed us to do this, and we're having the time of our lives.
Take us through some of that, just the reasons for Domino's success, the reasons for its remarkable growth. Because for 50% of your sales now are in overseas markets, right?
Our earnings, definitely.
Yeah.
And we're really proud of that too, as a little Brisbane company that now is bringing a lot of income back into Australia. I think first and foremost we're very innovative. We're entrepreneurs. Whenever we go to a country, we don't sit there and say we're Australian, we're American, we're British, whatever. We're entrepreneurs with a business model, and our competitors are French, Dutch, Belgian, Japanese. And we listen and learn, and we watch, what consumers are looking at, and we try to be disruptive. We look at what's around us and then say, well, how can we do it differently? And by being entrepreneurs, we're not offensive in, people are tired. In today's world, which is very global, is that, someone walking in and saying, well, in America, or in Australia, it gets very tiring to anybody. And we try really hard not to do that and just really listen to what are consumers looking at. First of all, try to have the best product relative to the category and the best service and the best image, and then we start thinking about being disruptive. What doesn't exist here that should exist here? And then we just get really creative, and sometimes we fail, and more often we're successful at doing that.
Your brand mantra is people-powered pizza. Now just explain what it means and just the importance of this brand positioning for the company.
We've had one bad quarter in the last 13, 14 years that I've been the CEO, and that happened in 2007. And when we became the market leader in Australia, we didn't actually know how to act. And, we'd been the follower for so long, we didn't know how to really lead. And we had to get a harsh lesson of reality as a public company when you've got to go to shareholders and tell them that, oops, these numbers aren't going to be right. And that's a hell of a lesson. You never want that to ever happen again. It hasn't, fortunately, so far. And what we learned in that period of time was how to listen to customers. We'd become arrogant. Our philosophies were being misinterpreted inside the way we sell them, and I'm as much responsible as anybody in pushing those mantras of things like, we want to have a lot of fun as an organisation. We start having fun at the expense of the customer, and customers were really harsh on us. We'd become the best way to categorise us in 2007, we'd become a male 18 to 24-year-old beer brand. We were blokey, we'd do single cheese and a crust, double cheese and a crust, triple cheese and a crust, 6 meats pizza, 7 meats pizza, 8 meats pizzas. Women would go, are there even 8 meats? And guys are going, oh, who cares? This is great. But it alienated us. It closed the doors. Mums are the gatekeeper to the home. And so we had to be really humble and go out and listen. And, we used to do a lot of imagery and pictures around how do you make the business attractive rather than you have to hard sell all the time? What characteristics you have to go after? And I'm really proud to say today that our fastest growth consumer the last 5 years have been women with young kids. And the things that they say about the business more and more in focus groups and so on, it makes us feel really proud that we've been able to make a difference, And there's been specific programs behind that have worked.
So how have you counted some of the healthy eating fact and the I mean, how does Domino's respond to a generations focused
Yeah.
on healthy, organic foods? And
Yeah, so we
6
do have
months.
some parts of our menu that diet, but we're an indulgent product. So we run a program called Indulgent Health inside the program. So the oxymoron there is that the number one reason you buy pizza is it's a treat. The number one reason you stop buying pizza is because it's a treat. It's indulgent. And what ends up happening is consumers eating pizza can sometimes be a little bit like getting drunk. Is that, you really look forward to the night, the party, you have fun, you get drunk, you regret it the next day, but you forget really quickly. And 1-2 weeks later, you sort of maybe reproduce some of that activity again. And same thing can happen with pizza. And in the bottom of a pizza box, there used to be a thing in our box, which exists in most other pizza company boxes, what we call the stain of regret. And that is, you've eaten a pizza, you look at the bottom box and you say, and that's where you get the hangover. Yeah. And so what we've worked really, really hard to do is we've nearly removed that in every box, and yet our product rates better than it's ever. It tastes better, our ingredient quality is so much better. We're the only pizza company to use a 30% fat reduced mozzarella. That costs us a lot more money. When you take fat out, you put more protein in. It's a real premium mozzarella, and part of our scale, we're leveraging that. We're leveraging the innovation of thinking. And so, we've reduced sodium, preservatives. So we're not trying to market ourselves as diet food, but we're getting better and better. And whenever Stefan, our head chef, presents products, the first thing is we want to see all the taste scores. We've got to lead on taste. But then the second thing is, now tell me how it's better for us. And we've been doing that. And I think that we can only move so fast. We've moved too fast in some places. In fact, the Kiwis didn't give us credit for it. And so we were putting too expensive a product out there for doing this, and we had to pull back a little bit. So you can't lead the market and not make money, so there's so far you can go with this. But the market's changing all the time. And we have a product right now we could launch that's 50% fat reduced mozzarella that tastes amazing, but it's really, really expensive. And so we've got to get credit for that, and so definitely got to tread carefully on this sort of stuff.
what I said before about Domino's being the one of the most sophisticated digital retailers now, with 60% of your sales on digital platforms. Explain how the technology has been a key driver of your company's success, and where do you think technology is going in this retail sector?
Yeah, look, I have a paper out on my board early this year, and I called it "Death Without Digital." I mean, it's the rate and pace of change is so quick that if you're not in this race now, it's not too late, but you got to be really careful. You could be taken out, and we're having the time of our lives in that space, by the way. This is a really fun space to be, and back in 2006 when we launched our first platform, we weren't the first pizza company in the world to launch a digital platform, but we were probably one of the first, and I think we're now the benchmark. Definitely in Domino's, it's become a benchmark. For the original internet was HTML, and companies, why most retailers in Australia got a little bit burned is you just post up a catalogue. Well, why do I go to the net for a catalogue? I can get that out of the letterbox. There's not a lot of advantage. But what we did is when broadband speeds connected and things like Flash became available so we could visually make pizza attractive, and then we started fulfilling needs, like we invented the pizza tracker. The number one reason you don't buy a delivery is because it's just as bad if we arrive in 20 minutes as it can be in 40 if we told you 30, because people feel time. And so, if you put the kids in the bath and the pizza arrives and we're knocking on the door too early, that can be just as bad of experience. Whereas with Tracker, you're now back in control. Giving consumers control is really, really important. And we got some really cool stuff coming out with that soon that extends on that. But we gave customers three big ones. We gave them Tracker, coupons collecting. You don't need that anymore if you're in digital. We either send you through our Offers app or through electronic direct mails or through communication inside the technology. We make less mistakes because you took your own order. There's just so many advantages for the customer that they've connected with that. And so a lot of retailers have been burned in that they're too busy trying to manage to the risk and manage to the things that I have to be here. The opportunity is unbelievable. Our challenge is actually there's so many things that we know we should execute, and they're in our pipeline, but it's just the ability and time to execute those and bring them to the market real. The problem with companies is as you get bigger, you start to manage process and not product. And we're very product focused, and I don't even feel like we're big. I know that we're becoming big, but the way we operate is that we work in small teams and we innovate in small teams, and we're always trying to break things down and try to reduce the cost of bringing them to market, because most ideas don't make it to market. They're killed on the way through. By the time they hit, they're really diluted. And how do you bring a pure idea that customers really love?
So the company's still got an informal feel to it, hasn't it?
It does. It's very casual.
Team-based, yeah.
It is really casual, and we have a meritocracy. I don't care how many hours you really work. We care about the results. You're not, when we do team members of the month and we congratulate people and so on, it's not done on how hard you worked.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was a byproduct to get something done, then, well, thank you for doing that. But actually, what are you getting done? How are you getting things done? And people are recognised and rewarded all the time for just achieving. And I'm blown away all the time by what, team members are bringing stuff up through the company, and they're major ideas, multi-million dollar ideas that are changing the world of Domino's. Pizza Tracker came from one of our guys, and it's used all over the world by Domino's now.
I can still remember sitting at a dinner with you 5 or 6 years ago, and you brought this out and showed me the Pizza Tracker on your iPhone, and you're pretty damn proud of it, and you see where the pizza was and the delivery system and so on. And I asked you the question, well, how many hits are you going to get on it? And you said something like 40,000 in the next 6 months. I think you got that in the next
few
6 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, it has. And being first in this space, one of the challenges I had was that in the early days, and the team had, is that you're a public company. You can't just waste shareholder capital. So, but when you're being an innovator, how are you justifying this? How do you bring when apps had really no commercial feel for most retailers back in 2009? I know that. That's not that long ago, really. But, when I came to the board in late 2008 and said, I think we should launch an iPhone app, this iPhone thing could be big. Well, explain it. And how do you explain it? And how do we know this isn't just a novelty, Don? How do we know you're not just going to waste money? And by the way, look at all these big famous retailers telling you there's no money in this space. So why are you guys going to be right? But, hats off to the board. They did back us, and I think they backed us because we got success. We're always living with the fact that if we failed, you get your ability to innovate reduced. The latest one, Pizza Mogul, that cost us just under $5 million to produce in something that's never been done before. And taking the board through that journey, and everyone's sitting there going, can we just test this somehow? And you go, no, you've got to build it. It costs $5 million. That's a really big thing to do. But what I was reminded of the board is that, my team, if we fail with this, those other big ideas, they're going to get reduced. We're not reckless about what we do.
So how do you keep this innovation? This approach to creativity in the company?
We're changing all the time. We're challenging it all the time because from time to time we do question, are we getting too expensive? Is that as cool as it could have been? Could we have done it faster and better and so on? So we've got new models and that we're changing all the time. Today I came straight from here from a Hack Fest, which was our first Hack Fest, where we get people from all over the company, franchisees, operations guys, finance people, digital people, marketing people, get put into groups, and then we give them one subject, and they've got an hour and a half to try and conquer that subject. And then we reward team members, and it's a real fun, high-energy day, and it's, creativity is being measured, usability is being measured, all this sort of stuff.
So what's the criteria? Accessibility, creativity, what?
Yeah, accessibility, that we're going to use it.
Yeah.
Usability.
Usability.
Creativity, presentation, how they present, how passionate are they about this idea? Do you own your idea? How real is this? And then we have a wild card. Wild card is one that we probably didn't win on the day for my overall points. Maybe they weren't good presenters, but God, it's a really good idea, and they probably won the wild. They're more likely to win the wild card. And but that's relatively new. Most of our projects, we have a sponsorship project and a sponsorship model. Sponsorship means that if you're seeded the idea and you've gone through a prototyping phase. Prototyping is, if you're an entrepreneur, you learn to develop elevator pitches. To be a successful entrepreneur, you get this idea in your head and then you grind it out through elevator pitches, because you're always asking people all the time and getting their feedback, right? Sometimes they don't even know you're asking them about something, but you're shaping this elevator pitch. And that's what we call the prototyping phase, which is a Google term. We stole that from Google. And then once you've got this prototype, so you've got enough advocates behind this idea, and so it's something that could become real, well, then it needs a sponsor. And a sponsor then goes to the team, our company, and says, look, I need this many people from finance, this many people from IT who will build it, I need this. And then they now work for the sponsor. They have two jobs. They work for their boss and they work for the sponsor. And they can't let down failing the sponsor is like failing your boss. And then they deliver on projects. They've got budgets, they've got costs, they all go, hopefully they have the odd drink together and socialise together. And
Well, tell us a bit more about the DNA, the culture of Domino's, and just what do you look for? People you employ.
yeah, so it's a meritocracy once again. So we really value that. Massively anti-politics. Have zero tolerance for it. And so I always say we're like a bullet train. And if and everybody's sort of throwing the tracks in front and trying to keep this thing going at 1 million miles an hour. And then you throw politics in, bam, you're grabbed with both hands and thrown off the train and just keep going. Because there should be endlessly zero tolerance for that. And red tape, I mean, we're a public company. You've got to have all the sound governance and so on. And I think, we've got an outstanding board for the size of our company that have done a really good job in working us through in that. And we haven't had anything go wrong in that sense. But overall, don't let governance and risk management control the company. Companies get killed by process. What ends up happening is the company tries to bottle its success, and in the day it tries to bottle its success, it actually begins the beginning of the end. Because what makes you successful today is probably not going to make you successful in the future. Have a way of thinking and so on, but don't structure it so much that ideas can't get through, and things can't get developed. And so in our business, there's those who do and those who help to manage, and the doers probably get a little bit too much credit because they're sort of people I aspire to. So, there's always a danger in that. But, the guys who still have to keep this thing from blowing it up, they're just as big a heroes. And we have this sort of Maslow thing where, for example, head of IT, doesn't matter what idea it is, nobody has the right to blow the business up. In other words, if that idea could sabotage the digital, 60% of our sales in Australia can never go down. And so therefore he can just stop the business at any stage and says, no, we're not plugging that in, that's not happening, I'm bogging it down and all the reasons. And he has the full power, even over me, to say, we're not doing it. Because, you get passionate and you think, but why don't we just do it anyway? What's the worst thing that could happen? He says, blow up. And you go, okay, really? You sure? And even if there's the smallest chance, he has the ability to do that. And there's people like that have that ability. Our CFO has that ability in other areas and so on as well.
But look at your board. The board understands, obviously, the difference in conformance and performance. They get the balance right on the performance side. The culture of an organisation really starts with the board. So how have you managed that relationship?
Look, we started with a $120 million market cap, and we had a chairman he's been on boards of billions of dollars a company, very, very good at making sure the role of the CEO, the role of the board, and defining those sort of things. And so I have to say it's flawless governance in my view. If the CEO is full-time bogged down and all that sort of stuff all day, how do they run the company? So the board's done a really good job through all of the phases of acquisitions and growth and so on to make sure management was running the business. And
setting the strategy.
In setting strategy, yeah. And we've got entrepreneurs on our board and people, very famous entrepreneurs. Paul Cave, who's been Australian Entrepreneur of the Year before, and Grant Burke is my business partner. And our new chairman, Jack Cowan, he's just unbelievable. He's one of Australia's best entrepreneurs in this space. And
Paul Cave started the Sydney Harbour Bridge Climb.
The Bridge Climb, yeah. And he's been in a lot of different businesses. He's a very, very successful entrepreneur. So I'm in awe of these guys sometimes too. They're very impressive men, and I get inspired by some of the things that they do.
Listen, tell us about some of the key personal attributes of a leader. What do you think are the attributes that really matter in a leader?
I think people back a plan, a vision, and a vision that is engaging, that engage other stakeholders in the business, that everybody can see how they could win in this environment. If there's winners and losers, then you're going to disengage the losers, obviously, right? So how do you try to paint a vision where we can all win in this environment by backing this plan? Whether it sometimes be bigger jobs, high engagement, better training, whatever it might be. So having a very clear vision that evolves. Too many CEOs come with a 5-year plan and they live the 5-year plan. So what happens in their last 2 years? Everyone's already waiting for them to leave. So the plan, it's an evolving, every year updated 5-year vision. It just doesn't stop, And so there is no, I've been here 27 years and I hope I'm here another 27 years. So, I don't think like that anyway. But I watch some of my peers and they come into a company and there's a 5-year strategic plan and they run it to the end. Well, but why did you get to there? Why didn't it just keep going? And so having a vision, a very clear vision, being humble enough to, I still really like how Peter Beattie, and I know he's a politician, but I used to like how he was very quick to at least admit when things were going wrong.
The buck stops with me, right?
Yeah, and, and whether I'm not, whether that's right or wrong as a politician, but he, you just felt this sense of trust for a while in that environment. And I think, CEOs, when you genuinely make a mistake, the best thing to do, especially in today's world, by the way, in the rate and pace of change, you have to admit defeat and move on really quickly, or you will get wiped out. If you wallow in this and everyone around you goes, dude, you screwed up, and therefore there's no trust. So trust is so important, because you admit mistake, move on with that, document the learning. It's not okay. I hate the thing where it's okay to fail. No, it's not okay to fail. But when you do fail and there's a crap load of learning, well, that's pretty good. Let's keep moving on. But let's not set this up that it's okay to fail. Let's measure what failure could look like, but we're not going in this to fail, right? Let's not ever get that attitude around here that we're just this place that creates a lot of stuff that fails. No, we've got to produce things that are successful, and so low tolerance for that sort of rubbish, where people just dicking around and think that that's okay as a leader. Sense of urgency, that in today's world particularly, it's, don't quote me these statistics, but I think Google told us that in the last 12 months, people consumed 100% more media online, and the year before was a record. When Vine gets launched, it's 6-second videos. You go, why do you need 6-second videos? I don't know why you need 30-second ones anymore. What you can achieve in 6 seconds, because the brain capacity to just consume this stuff going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, you've got to be able to move with that and bring everybody for the ride on that. I mandate my leadership team are on Facebook and in social media, not because they need more friends, but they need to understand how the world works. They need to comprehend how companies exist in this new environment. And it's taught us a lot being in this space.
One thing I remember you telling me about social media, the way you've used social media for your own advantage. You get the negative view. Suddenly it's out there. 1 million people see this negative view about a particular pizza. But then you get the people who come online and support you, don't they? You've seen many examples of that, haven't you?
Oh, definitely. And not only that, we have a 24-hour service in that now in our business. So the best thing in the world about social for a company is you get a voice from the consumer. The worst thing, if we never lose a customer, our sales can only ever go up. But when you're a large company like us, when you're serving over 100 million products a year in Australia, you're going to get some of them wrong. Now, make sure you have the vehicle for people to tell you you've done it wrong, and let them do it so that they feel that it impacts. A 1-800 line, and we have them, but you can get lost in that service and so on. So how do you make sure that for starters, you have the ability to encourage people to come to that, and then you respond to it immediately to try and fix it. That's the best thing in the world, and that's ownership. Then what we do is we have, for example, an operator engagement tool, which is an app for our franchisees, and we rate how quickly they respond, and we can see how engaged they are. And so are we the best at it? Well, we're trying. We're really trying, and we're listening. It's embarrassing sometimes things people say about us, but thank God they're telling us. Because imagine if they're they're going to tell anybody, right? They're going to go on a pregnancy blog site and say something horrible. They're going to go somewhere, and let's give them the avenue to talk to us, and then try to get it right more often.
Yeah, and then defend you.
Yeah, and I used to take a pretty horrible picture of Colonel Gaddafi being dragged through the streets in his last day, and I said, look, this is an example of a CEO who just didn't get it. Ultimately, the dictators of the world didn't get social.
Yeah.
They thought they could keep doing their old behaviour. Guess what? CEOs are no different. CEOs in companies think they can get away with their old behaviour. Guess what? They're not. They're kidding themselves. I take a little bit of pleasure in how big Domino's is now compared to some of the most iconic companies in Australia, and we're bigger than them. How did that happen? How does a little pizza company out of Brisbane become, will be an ASX 100 listed companies, one of the biggest top 10 listed companies in Queensland? How does that happen? Well, it's a funny thing, if you listen to customers and you work really hard to give what customers want, they sort of reward you, and that means getting a few black eyes. People say some pretty horrible things about me personally or the brand, but thank God they said it to us, because now we can fix it.
And work on the customer experience. Come back to, you were talking about leadership attributes before. If I was going to ask a member of your team,
I hate this question, but yes.
what would they tell me about Don? What would they say?
Oh, I think they'd say I work pretty hard.
Yeah. You're direct?
Pretty direct. I don't tolerate fools lightly. Yeah. I sort of zone out pretty quickly if someone's telling me just a bunch of blah blah.
Yeah.
I do care. I think, I hope that that's what they would say, that I do really care. That I'm a risk taker. Sometimes sometimes we screw up pretty badly because of our risks. Thankfully, they're internal.
So what's your appetite for risk?
It's really interesting. So when I was younger, I'd bet the house, and I would never bet the house right now. But I don't think we need to either. There's so many big things we can do without having to bet the house. So Pizza Mogul is a big bet. It's a $5 million piece of software that you're putting your name on the line out there with something that never happened before, and what happens if it doesn't work? Reputational risk and that sort of stuff about your innovation and so on. And because previous to that, pieces of technology for us costs like $500,000 and $1 million to produce. So when you walk in the board and say, "Hey, this one's $5 million," and it's never been done before, then I think I'm pretty prepared to take on some pretty big risks. I think if you manage to opportunity, you create a lot of value, and I'm really we've designed it that way. But there's a lot of really good people around me to just stand in front of me and say, "You're wrong," and don't blow us up, and I'll listen to them, because I really trust their opinion.
You show a lot of trust and confidence.
A lot of trust in the team.
Yeah.
That's what I try to say to young guys. We've got 30,000 team members. We're in 6 countries all over the world and growing at an immense rate. These guys are empowered in the field. You can't run a company, and I don't run a company. I lead a company. I don't manage a company at this size now. And, the big thing is letting go, trusting people. And that's my job today, is to just keep finding all the good people in our business and back them like crazy. And sometimes they're not the leader they're not a leader. They may be just a genius. And I actually say to our chairman, I said, we got a lot of quirky people in Domino's. That their behaviour wouldn't be tolerated in a lot of formal square companies. Team member and one of my senior team members rings me up, says, "Hey Don, I had a really big night last night. I'm not coming to work today." Well, he was honest. I kind of respect that. Better that he didn't just not turn up. And I kind of say, "Oh, okay, was it fun? I hope that was pretty cool." And then, it wouldn't be acceptable to do that every day, but that's good. Some companies would say that's just unacceptable. And,
Of course, of course. So just come back with your international operations, different work ethics, different cultures.
Yes.
Just how do you lead? How do you manage that?
Yeah,
those
it's
different
really
cultures?
interesting. I love going to Japan at the moment.
Yeah.
My gosh, that team is just amazing. I love going to the Netherlands. Our Dutch team are just so cool. And I live to go to those places. I just can't wait. And then I can't wait to get back to Brisbane because there's been a time and I want to get back. I actually love our people. They just do some really incredible things. And culturally, it's human traits are pretty similar. One of the questions was, are the Japanese entrepreneurial? Because the version of an entrepreneur to a Japanese might have been the Sony, the Toyota and so on. Well, that's a load of rubbish. They're human beings. They want to make money too. Now their interpretation of what is success might be slightly different. One of the things that we've had to work really hard on is our Japanese new entrepreneurs who are doing an amazing job. Our franchise owners, they're, employing a lot of people is a sign of success, which that's right. But employ a lot of people with a lot of stores, not in one shop, because you won't make any money. Don't staff it up and not make any money so much. Because they're so obsessed about really good customer service, and my gosh, we do a good job in Japan. So obsessed about getting it right, never doing it wrong, and then employing a lot of people means you're a good owner, franchise owner, and stuff like that, which is kind of pretty cool. But you also got to make money because you to go from there. So that's an interesting feature. But once you educate that, and the guys are doing an amazing job. Our most profitable stores in my company exist in Japan today. Right. And we got some, delight of my life walking into a store, and this little tiny Japanese lady said to me, "Mr. Meij, can you please reserve me 20 shops?" And she's got her second shop or something. I'm like, "Well, I'll reserve as many as you can do successfully. It's in your hands. As long as you do these things, grow good people, make profits and stuff like that." And yeah.
With you being the risk taker you are, and that appetite for risk, just what are some of the big mistakes that you made along the way? What are some of the things where you feel you lost it?
Yeah, the paranoia of arrogance, that's where I get really scared. Where are we really arrogant because we're just absolutely killing some space? We might have a part of something we're very, very dominant. Let's say that we've got 100% market share of something. It scares the living daylights out of me. Because anything... chances are you're going to get arrogant and you're just going to open the doors to something. So, we got arrogant in 2007, and my gosh, the customers told us really loud and clear, and it's terrifying watching some of the old videos, what people said about us. And do you remember that kid Corey boy with the yellow glasses who blew up a neighbourhood?
Yep.
We some of your team members are like Corey boy, and that's the most horrible thing you could hear, and but you have to listen to it and so on. So some of our big screw ups has been because we got arrogant in a space, and therefore we paid the price of that. So we built our second website and never launched it. Cost us well over $1 million, and we just didn't launch it because it did more, but it did less. It's kind of like Microsoft versus Apple. I know that on my Microsoft laptop there's a lot more things going on there, but I can't find them half the time because I don't know where they were. And whereas I seem to find everything on my iPhone, pretty simply. And so we threw it away. We were strong enough to throw it away, but that was a hard decision. You got to write that off.
Yeah,
and what I sometimes say to shareholders is there is a fair bit of expensing going on in this P&L. As profitable as we are, our EBITDA margins in Australia are 30%. That seems pretty high, but in amongst that, we've still innovated. We've still created a lot of things and expensed a lot of things that never made it. Or on the road to it, you've got to expense when you build stuff anyway. It's just part of IFRS and so on. So, so they've been some of the, I think another failure is when you look at your moment of a success on a project and someone never made it. They sort of left on the journey. So in one of the hardest moments when we were grinding it out, they blew up. And then they're not here when we were successful. Sometimes I reflect back on people, or I might see somebody somewhere, and you do have regret with that. That it's a shame that some of the really good people didn't make it on the journey because they just couldn't get the character to go to the next level, or we did the wrong thing by them as a business, and that's never a good thing.
We spoke about innovation, creativity in the company, but look, tell us about how you build critical thinking, how you build effective decision making, and where does the imaginative thinking come from, and how do you build that into your company?
So we do a lot of retreats, and I have a culture coach in our company, a guy who heads up, and he's a guy called Bernie Kelly who worked with for 2.5 decades, and Bernie's job, he's really empowered. He's publicly can say bad things about me, as a leader, and I'm totally cool with that. But he pushes and shoves and challenges everybody in the organisation to step it up, and he talks often about the characteristics of the success. And why I have him in the organisation, because he was a consultant and now we employ him a lot, is that he is there to make sure that culture's alive and well, and he's driving it and thriving it. And so, that critical thinking comes from getting around a room with leaders. Like I've got in another 4 weeks in North America, I've got all my guys going to a point. We'll go to Silicon Valley and as the leadership team of certain areas and just go into thinking. And then we analyse at the end and we come up with consensus on that. And now it's not okay if you didn't get your way to go out there and publicly annihilate it, your job is now to be part of it and make it a success. That bullet train's thinking. So, a lot of strategy planning, a lot of really thinking big. We study other companies and pretend we're them. If we were them, what would we do? Because they may be, in our opinion, failing. And then we say, okay, we did that. Now, what can we learn from that about our own business again now? Because sometimes you need to step outside your company, look at yourself. Because it's another fear. You say fear of failure is what's so obvious to everybody else that we're so dumb we can't see? We're just so in ourselves, we're just missing the point. So how do you make sure social's pretty brutal, but on the other side, what are some of the big issues? What are some of the structural issues that you can't see as a consumer going on in our company? So how do you make sure that that you continue to challenge that and push it and throw it? And we're endlessly trying to do this better and better and better. I'm off on Sunday to the US for 2 days in a conference, and I can't wait to meet a couple of guys there because they're disruptors. And they're like, for me, they're my rock stars. I want to go and meet them. I want to hang with them and just say, how are you doing this? And I'm a speaker, they're a speaker, so hopefully they'll talk to me.
You've got a lot of entrepreneurs in this room. So what advice would you give to would-be entrepreneurs?
I think, you've got to master that skill of the elevator pitch. You don't have to be a Steve Jobs salesman, but you still got to be able to shape it. If the thing about an entrepreneur is it's not necessarily good ideas that make it. Some of the best ideas in the world will fail. And in fact, some of the lame ideas are really successful. Because it's execution, it's getting that, and you've got to listen, build people around you that you trust for honest opinion, that you sort of feel are objective and are questionable people. They question things, they like to challenge things. And then as they're questioning back your idea, a lot of ideas will die, and they should die. Maybe you put them on a shelf and you bring back 2 years later, who knows? But be relentless, don't give up, but listen. Many entrepreneurs catch on fire and burn up because they didn't listen. There's such critical information they're being told. So in that phase, be really humble in the development stage, and when you've got success, keep pulling your head down under the covers, especially in this country, right, tall poppy. You just, try and keep, like I really hate media reports when it says Domino's is really dominant and Domino's is doing this. I hate those words because we're competitive, but we're earning it, we're working really hard here, and we're not trying, in a sense, to annihilate anything. We're trying to be successful. That's what we're trying to do. And we're doing it with fair things. Product, service, image, we're competing on fair playing grounds.
The ACCC loves the words market dominance, isn't it?
Yeah, and thankfully we're only 7% of fast food. So thankfully, as much as we may be half of all chain pizza, there's a lot of food competition out there every day.
Just to summarise it, because we're going to come to questions in the audience in a second. But we've chosen you as a game changer. So how do you think, to summarise, how do you think you've changed the game?
Look, I really think that all over the world pizza's ordered differently because of what we've done here. I think tracker and, the way it actually functions. When you look around the world, we sometimes look and say, hey, that's all our invention just there. It's being used by competitors and all sorts of stuff. I think our product innovation, the way we've thought differently, I always say to people, beyond technology is the indulgent health. That's the next big challenge for all food, is that, how do you make sustainable food that's better for you all the time? There's a hamburger brand that makes a very indulgent hamburger, and I always say, imagine if that burger was neutral. How many more would you eat? You'd love to be eating more of that burger. Just happens to be a Whopper. I'd eat a lot more of them. And, but it needs to become neutral food in a sense for you to be able to do that. And the knowledge is there today. It's a willingness, I often would say to one of the biggest soft drink brands, I'd say to them, if you brought out a diet cola that didn't have the baddie in there, aspartame, I'd buy a lot more of it, And today the technology exists, but why don't you do it? Well, it costs more money. But I would pay 50 cents more for that can of that cola, for that natural product in there, And so there's an audience that would do that. We learnt the hard way. We had fat-reduced cheese and regular cheese, and then consumers went, well, if there's no compromise to the taste, why do you have two of them? And so then we came back and we said, well, we only do one, the good one, the 30% fat-reduced.
So where to from here? You spoke about the vision for the company. What's your direction from here, and what are your long-term personal objectives?
The things that we put out to shareholders at the moment is we will be just under 3,000 stores in the next 10 years and 2,250 stores in the next 5 years, and there's sort of EBITDA and earnings sort of thinking around that, and so we're going to be a lot bigger company that way. But we also dream of owning more Domino's businesses in other countries. We dream that maybe we'll own other businesses.
What are some of the priority markets?
We never talk
beyond
about
what
that.
you have.
We never talk about that. But we don't want any competitive tension out there. But we vertically integrate businesses. We own a print business. We call a business called Domino's Impact Marketing. We have an equipment business that builds equipment that sells to other players. We have a finance business. We have all these other businesses, and then we think we may even do. Who knows? Maybe we could even be an incubator for some technology businesses, and maybe we could be. Maybe we could own another brand, and be a dual brand company one day. People around us are used to growing. There's, you come into this business to grow and be ready to grow quickly, and you can't retire and stay here. There's no place to retire and stay. If you for 1 minute, I get young guys saying all the time, well, how much money are you trying to make? And I said, well, it's not so much about that as much as it's about achievement. We're in a place where we're really changing things. Why couldn't we be one of Australia's biggest ever companies in history? Why couldn't that happen sometime over the next 1 or 2 decades? What prevents us from becoming that? If we start, utilising some of these skills that we've learned how to do now, how we can think and so on, outside of that too is that from a personal life point of view, always trying to get balance in this. It's really hard to be balanced, and You know, I want to be a better husband, and I want to be a better dad, and you know, in amongst all that, you know, how can I impart some of this knowledge onto my kids if they're interested?
Talking about being a husband, Jenny's here, your wife, and she asked me to ask a question of you. What do you think about when you get up in the morning?
The first thing I think about?
First thing you think about?
Well, I'm newly married, so that's not a fair question. So after thinking about that, then yeah, I mean, the day starts with already the plan. You already know the plan, and it's just hitting it at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And can you get a bit more into the plan today? Can you be so successful that that you end the day feeling like you achieved a lot, both personally? You know, how do you keep health going when you're traveling in all these places? So how do you keep balance? Because you can't run at this rate if you're not healthy. You know, keeping some sort of balance. You know, your kids, you know, your wife and your business and all the people associated with that business. How do you get more into that today? You know, which one? I mean, I love it when a meeting gets cancelled because I've got another 101 things I want to fill straight into that meeting. Yeah, I've got a bonus hour. So
over to you for questions. Now, we've got the microphones, so could you just throw your hand up if you'd like to ask a question? Over here, please. Thanks. Any other question over here? Okay.
Hi Don, thanks. My name's Nick. Thank you for your time tonight. I had to squiggle these down so I don't blunder them up. If I'm not mistaken, on a hunch, the store that you acquired that became second most successful might have been in Caboolture.
yeah, Morayfield. Yep.
The last time I drove through there, it was neither the commercial nor the culinary mecca of the universe. So how was that store so successful? What did you do? How did you differentiate? And particularly within the constructs of a franchise agreement, what was it that set you apart from the other stores?
You know, when I first first franchised that store, my view was, if I had to go and door knock every home in that area and meet every customer, I thought I was convinced that they were going to buy from me. And, you know, it's a product item, it's a service item, it's an image item, it's how can I want to personally meet them. And even that store was really successful and we were trying to be the best store in the world. We went and door knocked Burpengary down the road and went every home, you know, personally meeting with them. Hi, my name's Don Meij, I'm the owner of Domino's Pizza up the road. I'm wondering if you've ever bought a pizza from me before. And yes, no, good, bad experience. No, I'm not eating pizza at the moment. Would you consider eating pizza? And just talk to them and convince them to buy pizza. So we had to learn how to run a big store like that. I mean, that store that year turned over like 300,000 pizzas in its first year. Every one of those is made from fresh dough, fresh toppings, handmade, delivered or picked up. And so in this little tiny 70 square metre shop in the beginning. So we had all these new ways to think and create, and which we have a model inside called high volume mentality, which came out of that. So I teach a class called Excellence is Expected and another one called High Volume Mentality, and all over the world for Domino's. And they're all created out of that one store in Caboolture, which they weren't necessarily all my ideas. I mean, I stole throughout all the Domino's and put them into this business. But I'm really proud. My sister just bought 21 stores in South Carolina in North America. Because she's my sister, there's a conflict of interest, there are only Domino's stores here. And also in a public company, it's very hard to promote family. So she went on to be the operating manager of Domino's UK, which is a big business, and now she just bought 21 stores. Second week, she's up 40-50% on 21 stores, you know, and I'm just so proud of her because she's got that model. And it's customer focused. It's all about the customer and about your people and training your people and giving your people, you know, training them and then letting them be empowered to go and make decisions and look after the customer. And I know it sounds really lame, but there's a way to go and passionately do that. And it just works over and over and over and over again. Years and years later, it just keeps working.
Another question? Yes, down here. Thanks very much. Just 1 second, the microphone's coming.
Thanks very much, Don, for being so inspiring. Now,
Thank you.
Throughout your whole career, I'm sure you've had some downtime or sometimes when you felt negative and doubtful of what you're doing. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so when I was a franchisee and I grew so quickly, you know, back in the 90s, you know, when you're a young entrepreneur and you're buying these pizza stores and growing so fast, I was taking out 3-year loans and 4-year loans. So I think at the peak it was making $2 million and paying $2 million in debt. So you'd be struggling sometimes just to pay that payroll in the cash flow moments. So they were really, really hard, you know, that you think, geez, am I even going to be able to play to all these people who are believing in this vision? You know, it might sound pretty lame once again, but we're in a business where there is no excuses. Ultimately, every Australian, everybody in the Western world is going to, most people are going to eat breakfast, lunch and dinner, most. And we happen to serve heavily in one of those, which is dinner, and we try to drive lunch. And so we serve a high quality, affordable meal. What's our excuse? You know, what is our excuse today? You know, why aren't we selling pizza? There is no excuse, you know. We're just obviously not doing as good as somebody else, an alternative or whatever. And then sometimes we've got to change the voice. You know, Australia, through the booms, through softer times, you just change the voice of how you talk to people and their needs. You know, Australians have changed a lot in the MasterChef generation that it is. And Australians may not feel it, but it is the wealthiest time in our history. And Australians expect a lot more. We sell blue cheese pizzas, camembert, chicken and camembert, duck and blue cheese. We sold a $50 Wagyu pizza last Christmas. $50 here in Australia. And we sold a $50 Kobe beef pizza in Japan. So how do you do that when you also sell $4.95 ham and pineapple pizzas and so on, you know? And so in the darkest moments of that, my view is, if we just sell more pizza, nearly every problem in the world goes away. You know, and I really mean that, you know, like in the times when, you know, when you have to go to the market, and I never forget the phone call where you've got to do a downgrade, you know, and I hope I never, ever have to do that ever again, is, you know, it's the most sickening, horrible feeling. And all I knew is that we just go into dark rooms and just figure this out. We, you know, and it became we had to listen to the customer, but that wasn't, you just don't stumble on that. You just don't journey from here to there, right? You had to go through and it happened in Brisbane, actually. I walked into a meeting in Brisbane, and it was a franchise meeting, and one of the franchisees stood up and he just said, well, stuff the customer. If they don't like the business the way we are right now, and I just went, whoa, penny drop. Wrote that up on the board, you know, stuff the customer. If they're not prepared to, is that our new mantra? Is that what we stand for now? And it just became so obvious. We'd become so arrogant. All this research is starting to come in, and we had to learn how to listen again. And we become obsessed about listening. Obsessed about it. I mean, Pizza Mogul, you know, customers create their own pizzas, share those pizzas. We pay them for everyone we sell. We've got top earning moguls earned over $14,000 already, you know, and lots of people have earned $5,000 and $10,000. That's about listening. And then we had a mogul masterclass last Friday in the office, and the top moguls, we came in to listen to them. Now we're going to do big roadshows. Think about it, our customers are selling our product for us now. And that comes from listening, you know, like somebody comes to me now with a great pizza idea and say, well, go and register on Mogul, you know, because go and see our video art. And so, yeah, it's those dark moments is try to get all the clutter and all the excuses away in your head and just focus on where it really counts. And that's what makes a difference.
And just understand the customer control.
Customer control, that's a business thinking, but even in a personal experience, you know, when things are, how do you go into that dark moment and just try to figure it out? You know, go to what really matters. And that's really hard. It's an easy thing to say and it's a harder thing to do. But you just got to keep removing all of the noise and just go to the place. Just the most important thing that matters.
Another question? Yeah, right here. Thanks.
I wonder if you could talk about managing and leading passion, yours and others.
Yeah. I mean, I'm naturally attracted to people that get really excited and passionate about ideas. In fact, I'll often back an idea I think's not even a great idea, but if the person's so passionate about it, versus what sounds like a really good idea, but this guy's not really backing it, probably not going to work, right? So support energy and passion. I think it's contagious as well. That it's like a natural drug. It's like, you know, a cyclist getting the endorphins out of their legs and so on, you know, like it's a real passion, it's a real driver that becomes contagious. And you know, sometimes I'll get off a phone call, say I'm about to go and present to some team members, and I might have had a really bad phone call, something's gone wrong somewhere, and you're in that mode and you're trying to solve it, and you get, you know, it's frustrating. You have to really dig deep and say, but that's not these people's problem. So in my Domino stores, I used to have a sign that says, through these doors walk the finest team members in all of Domino's Pizza. And it was only facing the team members. Because the idea was, I mean, you might have crossed road rage on the way here. You might have failed an exam. You might have had a fight with your mum or, your sister or your neighbour. Something died or whatever. But in the end, you have to leave that outside this store. You're about to enter a team environment, and it's one of the things I teach in the classes is it's the job of every team member to make the store fun. Not just one team member. If you're part of this business, it's every team member's responsibility. People think, well, that's he's the boss. No. The coach is there to reinforce and encourage that behaviour. But, and there's conditions, not at the expense of the customer, not at the expense of safety, and not at the expense of your fellow team member. Because Aussies, we can get pretty sarcastic, right? Dude, are they your mum's pants? I mean, seriously, Which is cool if dude's laughing, but if he's not, stop, So, yeah, I think part of that is encouraged toward, it's contagious, and have a lot of fun.
Don, just tell us one other thing I just want everyone to understand is the Domino Partners Foundation, where you provide financial assistance to employees and their families. Just explain that.
So we do a lot of charitable things, but the best one is actually the one internally, and that is, because we employ so many people. But for as little as 50 cents a week, you can donate to the Partners Foundation, and the company donates, I donate, the organisation, charity raises, and we build up a fund, which is a non-for-profit internally, and then when team members come across hardships, they can apply to the Partners Foundation. Often they're sponsored. Somebody else goes, oh my gosh, you've got hardship, how can I help you, access the Partners Foundation? And I mean, we, Canberra fires and, people who've had maybe a partner that's had some health issue and then they needed to leave their job and go be near the bedside of somebody who's sick or ill, or there's some amazing stories inside the organisation. And it's an internal thing. So we all get a buzz from it internally because we're team members helping team members, and isn't that the core of an organisation ultimately, is that, we exist in the community, we exist as a group, and then obviously we exist for shareholders as well, and we've got to be returns and so on, but shareholders get the best returns from companies that really look after their people.
That's it. Can I ask you please to thank Don Meij?
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well, how do you make a comment about an interview like that? But I was sitting there, Don, and thinking, what would you say at the end of this? And so I was just watching you, and I thought, what are the vibes that you're sending my way? So here's some reflections. You'll have heard them 1,000 times before, but Ray described you as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer. Well, I would have said enthusiasm is undercooking it. I think it's excitement, and I think it's absolutely remarkable that, you still live with high energy that you do. You just exude high energy, and I'm sure you breathe the fire into your organisation. And, that's a wonderful thing. It's part of resilience, but, it's the joy of being alive and doing something that's, it's truly wonderful. I think the clarity of your thinking really stood out. And one thing that I look at corporations that win and lose, and you sort of touched on this, but not quite explicitly. But it's the capacity of people like you to see. What do you see? Look out and what do you see? So people are so intent on looking down at the processes. They don't see. They don't see the forces, they don't see the opportunities. And I think that was really so clear to me that, you're a person who just sees. And your agility, you can't sit still, which is, you're just bubbling with energy, but, the agility, both mental agility, which I'm sure you just breathe into the organisation, and openness. Openness to change, openness to feedback, and in fact, welcoming it. And imagination. I think you were humble there, and I asked Ray to just tweak that question, his question, to touch on that imagination, because this sort of a journey doesn't come from groupthink, or having a few strategists. Somebody has to be driving this with a wonderful imagination. And I think overall, whatever it takes to thrive. So you put all that together, and I mean, it's really, truly a spectacular journey. And the one thing that I kept asking myself was, as good as the journey's been, how much better could you have been if you'd finished your education degree? Like it might be a $3 billion company.
That's right.
But anyway, congratulations on removing the stain of regret from the pizza box. And I think I could really safely say in conclusion that you've never had to remove the stain of regret from your entrepreneurial journey, nor do I see that ever likely to happen. So congratulations. Thanks for a wonderful interview. And ladies and gentlemen, would you thank Ray for, once again, Brisbane's best in this space by a country mile. Wonderful, Ray. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, would you like to join us for refreshments out on the terrace? It's always good. Please come and enjoy yourself and stay as long as you like. And remember this for next year. As I said, we're planning for next year. It is really an important opportunity for entrepreneurs and innovators to hear firsthand from our great stars and tell your friends about it and come back and see us next year. Thanks very much.